The second way people try to get rid of corpses or carrion or whatever is burning those corpses. So they will either burn these corpses perimortem, so right around death or really close after death, or postmortem, days, months, whatever, after death, just trying to get rid of the body. However, little research has been done or has been published on the effects of burning on insect succession. There's been a few case studies and a few attempted research projects on this burning. And what they show in general is that burned remains are colonized in a manner slightly different from unburned remains, depending on the level of burning. Okay, so I had you read some of those burning papers, the Glassman burning index and the response of insects to burned bodies and that sort of thing. So it's basically insect succession depends on how extensive the burning is of that body. So bodies that are burned to a charred and cracked skin stage. So most of the body is still intact, but the skin is completely charred and cracked. That will allow for slightly earlier colonization. So instead of seeing maggot masses in down the throat, in the eyes, in the nose, or something like that, you'll see insects showing up very quickly and laying their eggs very, very fast after death. They don't take that time to walk all over the body and leave their eggs in places once they find a good place. This is probably because that cracked and open skin allows for many, many, many more oviposition sites. So flies will land, they'll find a perfect oviposition site almost immediately, and so you'll see these maggots show up very, very fast after death. Okay? So these carcasses will actually attract more fly oviposition and more fly activity than unburnt carcasses in the same situation. So it's all of those extra oviposition sites, all of that extra flesh and muscle and all that sort of stuff that is available for these flies that is attracting them somehow. Now, other work has suggested that oviposition is deterred if the burning completely consumes the flesh and organs, which just makes sense, right? I mean, if you got a body that is completely burned, there's nothing for those maggots to feed on, of course it's going to delay succession. There's nothing there for them. So why would the flies wouldn't show up if it's just bones? So if all of the juicy bits have been consumed by the fire, then it's going to completely deter or delay colonization. Now, it takes a tremendously high temperature and a long time to completely incinerate even a small body. Like this is a pig here, and this was just a one-off experiment we were doing. It was a small pig. How much was that? It was about 50 pounds that we just covered in gasoline and burnt, right? And that gasoline accelerant didn't get up to a high enough temperature to really cause any damage. This charred off the outside flesh, but left all of the muscle, all of the organs intact. Everything was good, and we got plenty of colonization on this body. And so it takes a lot of temperature and a lot of time in order to completely consume a body. And even then, if there's any flesh left, the insects will find it and they will colonize it. And that can be used, even those small number of insects that are able to colonize the body, you can use those to determine a time of colonization estimation. Now, there are circumstances where remains have been burned well after insect colonization in an effort to hide evidence. So let's say we've got a body, an animal that has been left out long enough to get maggots on it, and then somebody decides they want to hide that evidence for some reason. They try to burn the body. What happens under those circumstances is large quantities of insect evidence will still be around, even under instances or under cases where carcasses are completely incinerated. So even if they take all that time and all that temperature to completely consume that body with fire, you can still find insect evidence, because maggots are going to disperse from a burning body. If things go on fire, they're just going to run away. So you can look around and find these maggots as they tried to get away and use those to do a time of colonization estimation. Okay? And then the presence of insects or insect parts on a burned corpse is a good indication that the body was around for a bit before it was burned, and they may be used for that time of colonization estimation. The very least, the presence of insects on a body that has been burned shows, or that has been insects that were before the body had been burned. Let me clarify that. Presence of insects, burned insects on a body, indicate that the body did not, that animal or that person did not die from fire. So the body was there long enough for insects to show up, to colonize it, and then it was burned. You know that the fire didn't cause that death. All right, so that's burning of corpses. Very limited information on this burning aspect. Next common weird way we see corpses is this hanging of corpses. Now, the reason for finding a hanged body is usually due to suicide in humans, although there have been animal cruelty cases in animals where you get these hanged bodies. Now, a hanged body presents a challenge because fly larvae have no legs or arms or anything like that, so they have no means of hanging onto the resource in the face of gravity. And gravity is a pretty big force in these cases. So what happens here is the body will be hanged. You assume that this is how the body died unless there's other evidence telling you otherwise. And what happens is the flies will still show up normally. And they'll show up at natural bodily openings. So here we have this pig that's been hanged. They're going to show up here at the nose, the mouth, the anus, all that sort of stuff. And you can see in this close-up here, the pig's tongue. You've got a pretty extensive maggot mass here in the mouth. Those are all first instar maggots. So what happens is the fly will lay her eggs. Those maggots will hatch out. They'll start to feed. As they get bigger, though, they're moving in and out of that mouth. They're trying to move into the fresher areas of the body, and they just can't hang on, so they fall down. So they end up falling off the body, and they fall underneath. So here is a picture or a shot of a big old maggot mass underneath this hanging pig. So it's right over here. So you can see right here underneath the pig. This is a close-up of that soil area underneath the pig. Maggots are able to develop on just the drippings from a body. They do just fine in those drippings. And so that's what's going on here. Is this body is decomposing. You got these first instars that are still on the body. As they get bigger, they fall down to the ground, and they just feed on the drippings from the body. So with hanged corpses, you can still do a time of colonization estimation just using the oldest insects in this maggot mass down here at the bottom. Neat. Okay. The other thing that will happen with a hanged body is you're going to exclude the soil-dwelling insects on the body itself. So you won't see beetles or things like that that can't really fly in as easily. A lot of those burying beetles, those sorts of things, they are not very strong flyers. They have those little tiny wings. They can't quite get there. So instead of being able to fly in, we just won't see those insects on this body. And we can still do the time of colonization and the successional patterns, however. They're just in a slightly different place. They're just underneath the body instead of on the body itself. So that's hanged corpses.